CFL Talk. Welcome to Spanglish Sports World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, on CFL Talk, joining me as usual, David Morassutti. Thank you, David, as usual, for being here. Well, there's a lot to talk about today, and a lot of it really doesn't have much to do about games as usual. But now we have even additional things that we could talk about it later. The passing of Chris Schultz. Just so you get a chance to at least formulate some thoughts, about going to the Argo games and covering the Toronto Argos, where Schultz would be all the time, especially since he became the radio voice alongside Mike Hogan. So his passing is a terrible thing. It's also International Women's Week. I guess Saturday was the day.
Today's the day.
Today is the day. Okay. Yeah. So essentially, they've been talking about it already all weekend.
Yeah.
Because of the Meghan Markle interview and stuff. It was sort of emblazoned in that in that aura. So and also we'll talk about that too, as far as women in sports, women in the Canadian Football League. CFL.ca, Steinberg wrote a nice article about Costibile, and she is the editor at CFL.ca. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's start with the boring stuff. Let's talk about the football. Mm-hmm. And as far as the football is concerned, let me have you start with what you think you want to start with. What topic has piqued your curiosity?
Well, I know that you've seen this story too, because I saw it and then you shared it on your social media. That is the fact that the CFL has teamed up or is working with the doctor who helped put together the NHL bubble.
Right.
For the playoffs. I think it's a pretty significant news to come out because the league still has to deal with protocols and, how to do the protocols properly. This doesn't mean, and I don't think it means that they're planning to do a bubble, because none of the leagues are doing a bubble right now. I think the only league that did a bubble recently was we had the NWHL and the G League, but that's only because they had a small number of teams. I don't think that's what the CFL is looking to do. But I do think that the CFL is looking to really push forward and get their protocols all in order, because they got a couple of things that they got to get approved. Part of it is the play, getting the government to sign off on having the teams actually play in their stadiums. Based on the schedule, the league isn't looking to do bubbles. They're looking to actually have teams play in their own stadiums. And, they're also looking to get fans in the stands. We know that the CFL has been looking pretty closely at vaccines, and the doctor, I gotta get his name right, Dr. Dhiren Naidu.
Yes.
Naidu. I apologize if I butchered his name, but I think it's good that they're getting somebody who has clearly the expertise, and on top of that, the relationship already with the government of Canada to help them push forward right now.
Yeah, because in effect, this is almost a continuation of what we talked about last week. They're bringing in someone, as we said last week, that the commissioners should have gone with the players and the owners, a representative each. In other words, brought all the experts and interested parties to the conversation. In this case, they're doing the right thing because they're bringing a doctor, which is great in itself, but a doctor who has a relationship, as you said. So they're bringing somebody in there to vet for them to guarantee and or to create a system that will be palatable for the federal government and the provincial governments, because they have to satisfy all the provinces and the federal government that have teams that want to bring football to those cities. And now we're just talking about the ability to play the games. Now, to do that, we have to start with bringing the players in. The challenge with the Canadian Football League is and has always been the American players crossing the border, coming into Canada, and then being able to play. Now, we've learned from the National Hockey League, with Dr. Naidu is well aware of, there has to be a moment when players cross the border, 2 weeks, where they sit on their behind and make sure they remain healthy, that they are healthy and remain as such. And then they're put into the Canadian bubble, because what we've got right now is we've got an American bubble in the National Hockey League. And this is not a conversation we're having about the National Hockey League. It's about the CFL. We have right now, though, with hockey, and what Dr. Naidu knows is that there's a bubble in the US, a bubble in Canada. The border there's a hard and fast line there where both countries do not go on the other side without some sort of remedy, as far as making sure that they can release the people into the community. Hockey players are people. They live, they interact, they eat, they do all kinds of stuff that everyone else does. So when they come to this country, they must stay in this country. They must stay within the rules that they've adopted, thanks to Dr. Naidu, and carry on. And also, I want to stop there because I want your input on the idea of players. I say players coming from the United States. The Canadian Football League is a little bit different than hockey.
Yeah.
Only in the sense that there was a time, but it's actually no different than the way the National Hockey League is operating now. Their American players are here. So if you're looking for a template, and as a fan, you want to understand what needs to be done, it's clear what it is. If you're a hockey fan and you watched what's happened in hockey, this is exactly what has to happen to the CFL. If a player on a team in the Canadian Football League, what you'll find, if they go to the United States, just like a player, we've learned when a player is traded from the United States, they have to sit and they have to make sure they're not infected, and then remain healthy for 2 weeks to ensure that there is no infection, because we know there's a period of time that it takes for the infection to manifest itself. Your comments on that regard?
Yeah, I believe the NHL's rule is, a player cannot join a team, and this was also in training camp as well. A player cannot join a team until they've produced 4 negative COVID tests. 4 tests. I don't think that's something the CFL wants to, because unfortunately those tests can be expensive. Now, I think what's a little different now versus when the NHL started is the vaccine rollout.
Right.
I have a friend down in the States right now who's telling me that vaccine rollout's happening a lot quicker down there than it is up here.
Absolutely.
So if an American player is able and I guarantee it can happen, because this new vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson one, which is one shot, between now and when players usually report to camp, which is about, I would say, end of May, beginning of June, they're still probably going to have to redo the quarantine process. But I don't know. I wonder how different it will be knowing that they're vaccinated. I know in Canada, we're very big on, even if you get a vaccine, you're not able to go out and about without having your mask and all that stuff. Now, I know
we walk around. I'm going to interrupt you. We walk around with a health card.
Yeah.
And the future will look like this. There will now be another card. There will be a card that you will carry with you that says you were vaccinated. I presume it'll say when you were vaccinated, what vaccine was used. And based on those 2 things, there might be more on the card. They know how long it'll take for your vaccination to take effect, right? So you're not a hindrance to anybody as far as having the disease is concerned. Yeah. But here's the problem with that. Even if you're vaccinated, that doesn't guarantee you can't transmit the disease.
No, and that's the problem. too.
And so in essence, that card will be great for you to show somebody, but it's totally innocuous, really. And I don't mean, I wasn't making a pun on inoculation. It's totally innocuous because, quite frankly, you can still, at this time, we don't have assurances from our healthcare experts, our scientists, that once you have this remedy, right, for your personal well-being, this vaccination, does it also vaccinate you against carrying the disease, the virus, I'm sorry, and transmitting it? That is the next thing they've got to figure out. I'm not sure what that means, other than to say what we saw in the National Hockey League, what we see in the National Hockey League, I think is going to carry right through for a while until here's what I'll say. Until there's herd immunity, until there's herd immunity, which is basically the ability of society, a group of people, to not transmit the disease enough for it to perpetuate. So how do you get to herd immunity? Well, it depends on people who've been, the victims of this virus and survived, and the vaccine. So if they get to a certain point, then we'll have herd immunity. That's when, a disease becomes not so prevalent. It's something that goes down in percentile and becomes something we don't have to worry about. Now, I don't want to get too far into the weeds. At the end of the day, and I've done it anyway, but at the end of the day, there's going to be things that you're going to have to do as a player coming to Canada, guarantees that you're going to have to make, and travel restrictions which you are going to accept.
Yeah. So I think what the CFL is trying to do, first and foremost, they're trying to reduce the number of tests, COVID tests they will have to do, because tests, especially when you need the quick turnaround, those test results are quite expensive when it's all done privately. The NHL and the NBA have had to up their tests because of outbreaks, especially the NBA, players who played in games and then right afterwards, it was deemed there was close contact tracing, or that players were testing positive, not too long after. So the NBA has had to up their testing, and I think the NHL has sort of done the same in a way. I know that for reporters that go to Leaf games, they have to take one of those rapid tests before they can even before they can even go into the arena. So
how long before the game do they have to take the test? Do they take the test, leave, come back?
No, so I think what the turnaround's around 15 to 20 minutes. So what they do is you take the test, you go isolate somewhere until the results are given, and then once you're given the green light, you can go in. I think this is important because we're seeing with the travel, that's where generally teams have had to figure out alternatives, because in a plane it's very hard to get the social distancing done properly because it's close quarters. Travel has always been one of the hardest things to avoid the spread of the virus. So I think for the CFL, they're trying their best to keep the testing down, but also avoid too much, travel for their teams. I think they're going to be adjusting the schedule for that as well. And just the part about the vaccine I want to make clear here is what the government is trying to do with the vaccines is trying to lower the burden on hospitals. You're not going to stop people from getting the virus completely, but if you're able to get it to a manageable level, that's what they're trying to do with the vaccines. That's how you're trying to, prevent the spread. At least if you do test positive for COVID, if you have the vaccine, you're not going to have the symptoms that people have had, whether mild or very dangerous, that leads to you having to go to a hospital and your life being in jeopardy as well.
Yeah, it's all about figuring out a way to be safe and to not be an issue to everybody. The Canadian Football League, like every other sports entity, has a role to play in making sure that's the case. So essentially, this is why That's why I posted something, and in actuality, to suggest that I'm not impressed with Canada and its healthcare system. I am totally disappointed. I am disappointed because, um, as far as I'm concerned, I was of the belief, I no longer believe that we have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. In fact, we lag behind. Um, you know, we lag behind. It's the cruel truth. Whether it's because of the prime minister, whether it's because of the party, whether it's because of the way our healthcare system works, the problem, and I'm just, forgive me for this little bit of an editorial, because if we were on the same trajectory of giving everybody, the vaccine, Biden and company are talking about July for everybody having the vaccine. In fact, maybe even earlier, maybe June. And when I heard July and June, the first thing I thought of is, I said to myself, God darn it, that's the CFL schedule. They're going to be in the US vaccinated around the time we could really use it. The interested parties in the CFL, the owners, the teams, the players from the US and Canada, all of us. It would be great if Canada could keep up with the United States. And we have had an attitude in Canada where we think we're better than the United States when it comes to our healthcare system. Well, folks, it ain't true. And CFL fans are going to pay for it. That's the sad truth that I'm afraid of. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying it starts to have that odious odor. It's having that odor that we're going to be lagging that far behind, because our prime minister said September, maybe by September, late September, maybe a little earlier. Well, for us in the Canadian Football League, and by us in the Canadian Football League, I mean those of us that take part, cover it, everything, not just fans, everybody. That is one of the most imperative times in the Canadian Football League. The Labor Day Classics, Labor Day is very important to the players, to the general managers, ownership. This is when we're basically the beginning of going down the home stretch to November and the Grey Cup. So it's very important that we not depend on September. That's what scares me, David, is that in fact, when the government says September, maybe late September, it might be too late to, for us to convince them, for the people representing the Canadian Football League to convince them. But maybe on the bright side is, the rest of us can remind the federal government that it's because of them we'll be in the predicament. Because if the US has got the coronavirus in its taillights, or they're just coming up to it, ready to pass it, and we're still farther behind. I don't know, Aaron. Sorry, not Aaron. David. I am sure that when Aaron and I talk about this, because we will talk about it today on News Talk, it's going to be a bit shameful. And I'm disappointed. I truly am disappointed. This is sincere disappointment. I'm not trying to lay it on thick. It is how bad I feel about it.
I will say this. I think that they anticipate the timeline getting a little bit better with the Johnson and Johnson vaccine now rolling out, because Canada, we have a smaller population than the US. The US predicted, I think by the end of April or May, they were going to have over 100 million Americans vaccinated with the Johnson and Johnson vaccine. This is where, and you bring up our health system versus the Americans. What always confused me is, look, the American system, while, my apologies on the phone there, the American system, while it's more expensive, and you pay for what you get. In Canada, that's the issue, is we're paying for what we're getting in a way, but the Americans put so much it's private companies that are pushing these, Johnson & Johnson, that's a private company that is getting this vaccine done. The Americans, they're going to be paying for it.
I understand. You're 100% right. I totally get what you're saying. But here's the thing that that is also in Europe beginning to become a problem. They're having a problem for the same reason, and Europe is well known, and we all talk about us being a part of the way, our healthcare system is more like their healthcare systems. Whether you go to England, France, Italy, Germany, wherever you go, they all have government healthcare systems, right?
Yeah.
Now, Great Britain is leading the world in immunizing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not gonna bore people with explaining why, but what I will say is this: is that real short reasons. The EU has decided to use, a new group, because now they got everybody together, right? And this group that runs the healthcare system and taking responsibility for this needle business, they've never done anything before in the EU. They're starting from scratch. That's their excuse. England has the same people involved. The system, they're just basically taking the needle and using it to give healthcare to everybody. They're using the same system. That's why I'm offended and insulted by Canada's reaction, because we don't have that excuse. We're not combining with anybody. So at the end of the day, what I'm hoping for, the advantage that I thought we had is that Canadians are accustomed to giving everything to everybody, like the flu vaccine. I don't understand why they can't treat the COVID vaccine like they do the flu vaccine, right? Maybe because not everybody wants the flu vaccine. Maybe because the system they have for that is okay because they don't have to hyper freeze everything. All those little things get in the way. And that's why you're right about the Johnson & Johnson, because it can be refrigerated normally, as can one of the other two as well. But the big thing that gets in the way with Canada and the frustration for me and maybe people like me is the inability for them to secure the vaccines. That has been the biggest problem. And for us to have the Canadian Football League come and play, our country has to be healthy, because now what's going to happen is, you don't have the vaccine. There's going to be a lot of animosity between. Trust me, I'm predicting the future here. Trust me when I say this. There are going to be a lot of Canadian Football League fans. Maybe not as many here there'll be a few in Ontario. You've got Ottawa, Hamilton, and Toronto, where those fans aren't going to get to go to their games because they haven't been vaccinated. The federal government's going to have a group of people, a minority, not that many in the grand scheme of things, but a big enough chunk of very unhappy people. If we've learned nothing from the experience in the world, it doesn't take everybody to be ticked off. You get a big enough small group ticked off, they can make your life miserable. And that's my prediction for the federal government and Trudeau if they don't clean up this mess, because it is a mess. I'll leave you the last word. I've said everything I'm going to say on this subject. As I said, I'm very frustrated. I'm disappointed, and it's just shameful. It's just totally.
I'll just say this: it's not just CFL fans this is a problem that everyone is facing. So the frustration goes to multiple levels. It's not just sports fans. It's people who want to go to concerts. It's people who want to go and enjoy fireworks on Canada Day that are not going to be able to do that based on.
Absolutely. I guess let me clarify.
Yeah.
Within all those groups you're referring to, there are CFL fans. And those people in those groups, because of the CFL thing, are going to get a little more hyper. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Because CFL fans are very passionate, and I really think they could really make some noise. See, don't look at the way Toronto reacts.
Oh, yeah. Look at the way the other one.
Look at the way Hamilton's going to react. Maybe even Ottawa, being in Ottawa. But I guarantee you this, maybe not even Vancouver, BC, the Lions. But once you get into the middle of the country, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary, you're going to have some tick people. And those folks are going to be legitimately upset because the CFL is their heart and soul as a group. It isn't less of a heart and soul in BC, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. It's just that it's that much more intense as a full unit, as a bigger chunk of their community. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, no, and I totally agree.
Right. Oh hey, a lot of people are going to be ticked if is vaccinated. Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of people ticked. and the federal government's going to have some business to do. I said I'd stop on this subject. I'll try and do it again.
Yeah, no, and what really gets people going up here right now is seeing the percent. It's not the, and I always tell people say, oh yeah, but America's got a bigger population, that's why you're seeing a lot more than getting vaccinated. I said, true, but look at the percentage of the population versus what Canada is doing. Problem is Canada didn't secure enough vaccines based on, you know, our population, percentage of population. On top of that, when the vaccines did arrive, the rollout was sorry, the rollout just was not on the level. And that's what concerns me more so than getting the vaccines. It's the rollout. You know, I have a grandmother who's 91 years old. She has not received her vaccine yet because of where she lives. But I know my aunt, her sister, lives about a 20-minute drive north. She's received her vaccine because of where she lives. That's what concerns me. You know, the numbers are much higher in Toronto and in big cities than it is in the smaller cities. But it's the smaller cities that are getting the vaccines first.
Yes, and that's fine. You know, I right now am waiting for my turn. And what am I doing to wait? Well, I called the health department here in Simcoe, and they said, well, not yet. And they sent me an email back and said, you know, we'll let you know when it's happening. Okay, fine. I'm not going to bother them every 5 minutes or even every day or even every week. But in a couple of weeks, I'll go, so how's it going? You know, this is what I recommend for people to do, right? And this is what they have to do. And what you're speaking to is exactly that, which is, you know, be informed, figure out where it's happening, figure out where it's going to happen for you, and then find the connection that gets you there. That's my recommendation to everybody. Because for the most part, when it comes to the vaccine, there are people who are going to want to jump the line. And there are going to be people who let them.
Yeah, and we've already seen it already.
Oh, absolutely. And the reason that'll happen is because there are going to be people who are intent on getting it and will be the squeaky wheel. And then you'll have the group of people who go, oh, well, I'll patiently wait for my turn. And then they, you know, they might get left behind. And then you get the people who don't want it. So, you know, as far as the issue with vaccination is concerned, we also have to concern ourselves about getting enough people vaccinated, because the goal ultimately is herd immunity. So, you know, for that to happen, you know, we're talking 75, 80% of the population has to have either had the coronavirus or the complete set of vaccines if a set is required.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think I'll be a little more optimistic when I see. I mean, I talk with my pharmacist about it. He says you're going to be waiting a while because of your age and you don't have any pre-existing health conditions, which I'm fine with. I'm not the concern. My concern are the people. My concern are the people who have a higher percentage of getting.
I like that. I could just see the look on your face. You think I'm too healthy? Well, thank you. You know what I mean?
Sometimes I don't feel healthy, but to think that somebody else tells me I'm healthy, I'll accept that.
Well, that's even better, right?
Exactly.
So yeah. So I mean, there's good news in there somehow.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's leave COVID-19 and the Canadian Football Leagues. You know, I think it's fair. What we can say is this. I think it's fair to say there's going to be hope for a season where hope didn't exist. Maybe a hope does exist. Maybe if people get on it soon and figure out what needs to be done, hopefully, let us hope that people get all the legwork done now, start, you know, getting ready for when the day comes. Let's not wait till the schedule starts and then people go, okay, maybe we should do this. You know, as let's hope Randy Ambrosie, the provincial, federal, and, you know, the healthcare system and everybody involved, and the wonderful man they've brought in, the wonderful doctor they've brought in to look at the situation and to help set it up. Let's hope that they get everything they need done ASAP, otherwise known as soon as possible, because that's what we're looking for, right?
Correct. That's all we're asking for, is that when things happen, that they have something in place to be prepared for any changes.
Let's not get to the point where somebody says, you're actually very healthy. You don't really need the vaccine. When
No,
we get to that point, we better be at the point where someone says, all right, here's what we're going to do. Don't worry. We already know what we needed to have done by the time we invite the players here. Make sure, if I were to, off the top of my head, go with a timeline, determine the date the players are going to need to start coming here. Make sure that date they have the proper information, the proper process, one that is agreed to with provincial and federal governments, so those players can come in here and then get together with the other players and have their own little bubble, their own little training camp bubble. This probably means we won't get any exhibition games. That's probably what it'll mean. I can see that being maybe something that'll have to be foregone, right? Keep people in their own, each group in their bubble for as long as possible and maintain that. And then, of course, arrange all the information required for all the teams to know where they can be, where they can't be, and all that kind of stuff, and have that all organized well in advance. But you know what, David, that won't happen until we're sure there's a season, because we know what we've learned from experience is the Canadian Football League won't do anything until they know what's actually happening. Other than signed free agents, everything else will wait on a guaranteed, knock them down, drop dead date. But I hate to use that term, sorry. That date, it has to be firm, that we're actually going to do this at this date, and we're going to actually have our first game at this date. And everything that needs to be done to get us to each of those points is taken care of and planned for ASAP. Exactly. All right. It's Women's Week. I want to recommend to folks, there's a nice article, as I said, and it was written by Pat Steinberg, and it's about Christina Costabile. I'm not sure how it's said because I've never met her and I've never had to use her name. So I'm sorry if I'm making that name, saying that name incorrectly. But the point being, she is someone who is up there in the Canadian Football League. There are women referees that we have. What do you think? Frame this for me in your opinion. What else we can do? We have people working at CFL.ca with real jobs that have to do with, the putting of CFL.ca, which is a great website, by the way. We all love the website. I think we do anyway. And what else can women do? What other signs do you need to see, other than the obvious, more women in management of the teams, more women on the sidelines, whether it be refereeing or working with the teams, in the management side of football teams? We've had a few. How far do you think it'll improve this year? We have about a half dozen women in management positions in the Canadian Football League. Starting next year, could you see a dozen?
Oh, I mean, I could. I definitely can. Pinball, I hadn't listened to the full video yet, but Pinball was kind of saying, let's take the lead of our own in our own backyard. And he's talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Raptors. Both organizations employ women in coaching positions, skill development positions. They've been, they've been very, Haley Wickenheiser, how much you have to say about Haley Wickenheiser she's probably the most recognizable female athletes in this country, in my opinion. And, exactly. And I think football can do a lot more. And there are women on the sidelines. They hold very important positions. They don't necessarily have to be management, but important roles. It's hard because coaching. We're seeing it now in the NFL a lot more. Coaching is an area that women are starting to really break through. I do think one day we'll see. I think the big step for the NFL and hopefully one day in the CFL will be a female offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Right now, there's a lot of assistant coaches. That's going to be the big step. Head coach, it'll take a little bit of time because unfortunately, and this is more of the NFL than the CFL. I think CFL, it's a lot more progressive they are willing to give the opportunity for those who have proven that they can succeed in those roles.
Yeah, working their way up,
Exactly.
starting with, you don't just, it'd be great if all you had to do is say, okay, let's find a woman that knows football. Let's put her, that's just
No,
ludicrous.
it's not real. That's never how it works in sport.
So what has to happen is there has to be more, there has to be a recognition by women and the men that control the feeder system of football, that there is a place for them. And once that place is established, I'm not sure how you do it, but what has to end up happening is women who are interested in football get a chance to be involved. They'll have to do it like every other football coach, every other football person that didn't play the game. All right, because that's where I'm gonna parse this. I'm gonna parse it with the people who never really played the game but got involved on the management side.
Yeah,
they started in either they knew somebody in the business and they were given a chance to work under them, like they did in Montreal with some ladies, and like they've done in Toronto with some ladies, where they gave them a chance. They gave these women an opportunity to work alongside the GM and to learn, a mentorship program. So that's one way to do it, right? Then you've got the other thing where if you can get women involved in small, small football, in other words, minor league football, and get them involved with coaching little kids and then growing from there. Now, the mentorship thing can take care of women immediately, can add women immediately, more immediately than the other way. The other way is a longer route, depending where you come from. The good news is that if they do both mentorship and mentorship is great because it accelerates the pace of bringing people in, of bringing women in. Mm-hmm. The other way creates a better foundation for sourcing women who are involved in the management of football. Now, your turn.
Well, I think the two you mentioned were the two I was going to say are the most prevalent, because the only way you get into sports and into the high levels of sports is to get your foot in the door. Unfortunately for women, getting into football doesn't mean playing. So that's sort of eliminated for them. But mentorships, I think that's the best way to do it. Conferences. Let's have the CFL hold a conferences, and I know it's a little different now with COVID-19, but have talks about trying to build the interest of women trying to get into football.
Did that at Blue Mountain this year?
Yes,
that was a consideration. They'll need to continue that, if I can add
exactly. That they gotta really be willing to put in the effort.
Whatever word you want to use.
Prop up the women who are already in management to lead these discussions, because they could be seen as role models and people, and an example for these women to follow if this is truly what they want to do. On the media side, I would love to see. I mean, now she's no longer with the CFL, but Brody Lawson was a great example of somebody who was right front and center. Unfortunately, it was mostly with CFL.ca. I look at someone like Sarah Orlevsky out in Winnipeg. She's front and center of every Winnipeg Blue Bombers game. You know who she is. You know who she covers. Let's get that going with the other CFL markets, even if it's not on the sidelines. Other areas of the broadcast. Let's get these women interested in both aspects of the game as well.
Can I interrupt just for a short moment?
Yeah.
And when you were talking about management and such, what if they're allowed to have a woman in and her salary doesn't go against the cap?
Exactly. You know what?
I Frank, just want to get that in because we went by that stuff. Go ahead.
But Frank, that's exactly it. I hate to say it because some people think it's a cop out in a way because of the way the NFL does the Rooney Rule and incentives for hiring people of minorities. Hiring minorities, you incentivize it by giving NFL teams like in the CFL. Wouldn't some might say, oh, but they have to be given something in order to hire these women. But at the
Uh,
same time, you're also saying, we want to make it easier. We want to make the path easier, and women might not. I don't mean this begrudgingly. I think it'd be great if we would say that we're eliminating the roadblocks, potential roadblocks. We're trying to build, as Pinball says, we're trying to build bridges, not fences, to have women involved in the game. And what a better way than to say, you know what, if you were to hire, let's say, a female assistant coach or an assistant general manager, it does not count on your coaching and management cap. I think that's a fantastic way to do it. You don't want CFL teams to go, well, if we hire her and it doesn't work out, we're stuck with that cap hit. So I think that's definitely a great incentive. And I again, the incentive needs to be seen as a way to help improve rather than seen as we felt like we had to do it as well.
Yeah, no, there should be, and there will be. I am fully convinced that women will be more and more involved in the Canadian Football League, just as they have been involved. They were part of the mentorship of getting an NFL referee as an NFL referee in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
They came here and they worked our sidelines as well, as part of the mentorship program for the NFL, getting women involved in officiating in the NFL and the Canadian Football League as well. Now, that the big key, the only word that's necessary to say and synonyms relative to it is opportunity. That's all women are looking for. And generally speaking, that's what women are looking for. They're looking for opportunities, to be given a chance to show what they can do. Before, in society, the thing that I support the most, more than anything, is that women should be heard. It doesn't mean that women should be assumed to be whatever but they should have the opportunity to be heard, and that's what has to happen. And in this case, women have to have an opportunity. Hopefully they can get an opportunity to show that they can do the job. Now, because of the way things are, there are going to be some speeded up versions of it, but incrementally. That is what I'm looking for on the long term. On the short term, like I said, I'm reviewing what we talked about. I think we both agree. Starting from the grassroots and working their way, and then the mentorship, the combination of the two till the grassroots part develops the way I believe it can, and that's what we're looking for. The next story in the Canadian Football League that I'd like to talk about, I'd like to give you a few minutes, and you can start. We both. I was going to write something. I was going to write something, and I was basically going to read it. In life, we look for constants. Interruptions of those constants is unacceptable at every level, at every time, depending on everyone's personal preference. We reject change. We don't like things changing. Well, this week, something changed drastically. We lost a great football player, and Schultz, as we all adoringly called him, Chris Schultz, number 67, drafted out of Burlington, played for a Team America, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, was a starter, right? Was a starter for 3 years. And I think he deserves a lot of the credit for the great football support there is in the town of Burlington. He is one of the main reasons why that is a hub of football. It's where the CFL PA resides. It is partway to Hamilton, where basically the Football Hall of Fame is. Hopefully he'll get there. Please share your words about Chris Schultz. We went there. I looked forward, and as an excuse, I'd say hi to Mike Hogan just so I could say hi to Chris Schultz, because I knew Hogan better than I did Schultz. And I'm going to miss hearing his voice talking about football. How about you?
Yeah. So the one regret I have now that I've reflected on, I wrote a story about Chris, about Schulte. The one regret I had is I never got to meet him, really get to know him more than a lot of other people did. Because, first off, my introduction to Chris Schultz was like most people. I watch him on TSN, any game. He was on the panel. He was a mainstay on the panel. He is the one who taught me about the game. His analysis is what made, you really learn a lot about the game listening to somebody who's played the game talk about it. And it's one thing with Schultze, it was not just the way, his analysis, but it's the passion he delivered it with, the enthusiasm. He was, I watched, there was a video that James Duffy put out. I think he was doing like a spoof, like he was gonna try out for the Toronto Argonauts. This was back in the late '90s, I think '99, and he had Chris Schultz kind of coach him up. And Schultz had that's where his personality really showed off. He's working with TSN at the time. It was really funny just to go back and see that. He had the mustache at the time as well. I thought that was a great mustache. It's too bad that never really stuck around with them for what it did. But I talked to some people about him. I mean, I read the story that Mike Hogan wrote about him. It was kind of hard not to tear up a little bit reading that story by Hogan, because you saw how close their relationship was. And for me, this hits a little harder because of his age. 61. My dad was 63 when he passed away. So that connection, I get what the family's going through right now, because it's, all of a sudden, the sudden death is very tragic.
If I didn't know any better.
Oh,
Ooh.
well, anyway, listen,
Yeah.
I just accidentally did something. I apologize. I was just trying to get it ready. I was just
okay, no worries. I know you probably have something that you can play for this.
Yes, I will.
So I'll kind of sum a little bit of this up, but this is a person who is, big on the broadcast, but as you said, his work in the community, coaching, and just getting kids interested in football. That's something that the CFL, this was what made him such a great ambassador for the CFL.
Absolutely.
He was never just.
I have to leave it there, okay? Because I have this 7-minute thing.
Oh,
it's an interview I did with him in 2015. I had him talk to me. This video was created back then. This is nothing I put together now. This goes back 6 years when MLSC's two partners, Tannenbaum and the TSN Bell, bought the Toronto Argonauts and brought the team to BMO Field. And I had a chance to talk to him about what was going on at that point. New rules were instituted, and this is what Chris Schultz had to say.
Some guy here, I don't know. If I didn't know any better, he might be big enough to play football. He looks familiar. You look familiar.
Oh, that's good. Chris Schultz here. How are you?
Chris Schultz. Where do I've heard that name before.
Many years ago.
Cowboys.
Toronto Argonauts. That's right.
Absolutely, sir. Here it is, a new day. We've been for years now that the conversation has been fooled by the Argos. Heard Braley himself say he was hoping this was going to be a 2-3-year thing. It became a 5-year thing. It finally has happened. Here we are at the stadium's right out there. You had a chance to get out there?
Yes, I've walked around the stadium, and aesthetically, it's gorgeous. I mean, the advantage of this stadium is if you have a season ticket on the 55-yard line, and it's in the lower bowl, you get a view of the football field like you've never had at Rogers Center, and not even close. I think when you try to make a comparison, it's like Commonwealth Stadium for the Eskimos, but everything is in closer proximity than what Commonwealth has. And I do equate it very closely with the Investors Group Field for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, because of the way that the stadium seats are structured. You're going to have great angles to see a football game, regardless of whether the play is in your end of the football field or the opposite end of the football field. It's a unique structure, and they're going to continue to improve this. And everything that means is that finally the Toronto Argonauts can actually have a home field advantage, because they will put canopies on, they'll keep the sound in, they will make this into one of the nicest football stadiums in the entire league.
Yeah, in deference to what Mr. Wick said, he wasn't aware that Winnipeg has
enthusiasm the fan gets confused. It won't be like that here. You're going to be out able to touch the players in a much more reasonable way in terms of your enthusiasm, your energy, your volume than you ever had. And that'll be half the fun because you're going to see pockets of people gravitate to different pockets of the stadium. So all of a sudden you have this different venue of entertainment. And when you first walk in, you will know where you want to eventually sit. It's going to be an experiment for you. But the bottom line, in terms of the architecture of what a football stadium means, this place has it. The commitment of the new ownership. They want to make it work. You put those two together, all you got to do is get a football team that performs and wins. You will have great crowds for the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah, we're talking about 40,000 seats. It really doesn't matter. Once you get up to 30, 40,000 seats, it really doesn't matter in a Canadian football. We certainly have more. Because, quite frankly, the more seats you have, the lower price the ticket. So as far as a business plan, there's no problem. I call it the Boston Red Sox principle. They only have 30,000 seats. They're never empty. And people want to go where they can. And did you see that happening here as well?
Well, you see, the intimacy of the stadium is what is key. And the farther you get away from the playing surface, unfortunately, the fan has less of an influence on what's going on in the football field. So when you see 80,000 or 90,000 seat stadium, the fans at the top of those stadiums, the football players look like tiny ants in working, trying to figure out the play, but it's the lower bowl, it's the number of seats so close to the field in the end zones, on the 20, on the 55, right around that makes the difference for the fans, it makes the difference for the team. So yes, the numbers are always critical. You always want as many as you can have in terms of the football stadium, but what's more important is to have a core group of fans that are as close as possible so they can feel the energy of the game, and in response, they get a great feel for the team, and it's a definite home field advantage.
Here's a question, and I won't ask you to discuss all of the rule changes. Favorite rule change?
I love the non-contact after 5 yards. Last year, there were several games in the league where there were too many punts and there was not enough scoring. What makes football good? First and foremost, is league changes. In the Canadian Football League, you don't want a bunch of 2-and-outs. And then third thing is to always have the ability to score quickly. Defenses will adapt to new rule changes, but the fact that you cannot grab, touch, anything to receive past 5 yards, I love it. Remember, we're in the entertainment business. We look at this differently than the coaches. Defensive coordinators around the league are losing a lot of sleep on how they're going to develop their athletes to make sure that they can play good man-to-man coverage against some of these great athletes that are receivers. For us, all we want to see is lead change after lead change and drama going in the fourth quarter. With these rule changes, we have a chance to have that consistently.
Is there a rule that you're not that in love with?
The one that I'll be so interested in was when you would run a football and 5-yard penalty would ensue because players are trying to make the tackle as quick as they possibly can. That always slowed the game down. Now with the rule, well, the interior 5 cannot leave until the ball is actually stumped. Will give the punt returner the chance to field the ball cleanly and get some positive yards. That's the one rule that I'd like to see adjusted, and I think it will be because of the rule that the interior 5 cannot leave until the ball is actually punted.
And my last question is, last year we suffered, we had poor offense, and you discussed, and I think you were right, the draft kind of hurt the offensive lines of every team. A lot of difficulty because it is, football is a team sport, right? And once you take away an element or two, like, then all of a sudden that team aspect suffers a little bit. Can I assume then that this year maybe we'll see a little bit better offense, better offensive line production, positives from the offensive line now?
Honestly, I can almost guarantee it. Because if you have a skilled quarterback, with a knowledgeable quarterback, and he knows past the 5 yards, he has one-on-one opportunity in space, he's going to be able to figure out which is his best option, go to it quickly and consistently. Last year, even though he knew where to go with the football, if the defensive back wanted, he could impede the running stride of the receiver, but by doing so, then the quarterback would hesitate because he wasn't truly open. Remember, the value of the receiver is to gain separation, to make himself open. Now, with the rule changes, you're going to see receivers open more consistently. So if you got a good quarterback, you really have an opportunity.
Gee, we already had a sport that required a good quarterback to win. Now we're making it even better for guys like Ricky Rich.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Hey, you see this?
I see it. Ray will love these rules.
If he comes back,
These
That was for those of you who don't understand it. That was live to tape. There was no audio editing done. That was 7 minutes straight. That was 7 minutes straight with. Let me turn that off. Sorry, folks. That was 7 minutes straight of an interview. He did all that, answer the questions. It was an easy job to do, and I think you can appreciate that, David.
Very much so. His passion and just breadth of knowledge that he showed right there just shows what we're going to be missing going forward without Chris Schultz here.
It is terrible. It's just another a great person. You know, bigger than life, and more than just a football player, more than just a television personality. He was a human being who had a handshake that he left a mark. Literally, when you shook his hand, you knew you shook Schultz's hand. He will be always loved and remembered, and I look forward to his induction into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Frank.
He is David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, seen live Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you for watching. I'm Candid